At first, they were just ordinary recordings. A camera left running, a tape found years later, a final moment captured by accident. But these recordings became something no one was prepared to see. And somehow, what you're seeing right now is not even the most disturbing part of this video. Because the final piece of found footage is the one that makes this entire list so hard to forget. But before you're about to see that, let's start with the first terrifying tape.
Look at it, Omar. This is what I've been doing with weeks of vacation.
On August 15th, 1989, a family in Stockton, California found something on the side of the road that looked completely harmless. Their car had overheated along Interstate 205, so Alonzo Lure and his young son Hector walked down the road to find a payphone, while his wife stayed behind with the vehicle. As they walked, Hector noticed a crumpled military-style jacket in the bushes. Inside the pocket, he found a few cassette tapes and an unlabeled VHS tape. To a kid in 1989, a mystery tape probably felt like something exciting. Maybe a home movie, maybe something random someone had lost. So Hector took it home. Later that night, the family put the tape into their VCR. At first, the screen was almost completely dark. Then a fire came into view. A house, still under construction, was burning while someone behind the camera quietly filmed it. But what made the tape disturbing was not just the fire, it was the voice. The person recording was not panicking or calling for help. He was whispering, breathing heavily, and speaking about the fire like it belonged to him.
The whole sky's black with smoke.
Then he started talking to someone named Omar.
Take a good look at that. When you tell me, get on.
As the flames grew, sirens could be heard in the background. Firefighters were arriving, but the person filming did not sound worried. He sounded entertained. He began commenting on the firefighters as if he was watching a game, laughing while they tried to put out the fire.
Look at it, Omar. This is what I've been doing with weeks of vacation. The fire department's trying to put it out.
And then, near the end of the tape, he gave a final message to whoever would eventually watch it. Your house is next.
This is the game, as you all know. Isn't it lovely? But remember me, ladies and gentlemen.
For investigators, the tape was chilling, but it did not immediately solve anything. They did not know where the fire had happened. They did not know who was filming. And even after studying the tape frame by frame for months, they still could not identify the location. So in 1990, the case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries. Within 2 hours of the episode airing, the tip line received more than 1,600 calls. Most were useless, but 2 of them changed the entire case. One caller recognized the burning house immediately. It had been directly behind his own home in Redwood City, California. That meant investigators finally knew where the tape had been filmed, and the location connected the video to something much bigger. Between 1987 and 1989, someone had been setting fires across the Emerald Lake Hills area, burning homes under construction and starting multiple grass fires. The damage reached millions, but until the tape surfaced, investigators had no idea who was behind it. Then a fire captain compared the arsonist's tape with his own footage from that same night, and the fires matched perfectly. But the disturbing part was the camera angle. The arsonist had been filming from a cluster of bushes only about 50 feet behind where the fire captain had been standing. While firefighters were trying to stop the fire, the person who started it was close enough to watch them, record them, and laugh. Then came the second breakthrough. a woman watching the episode recognized the name Omar. Her teenage neighbor had that name, and when police questioned him, he admitted he had been there when the tape was filmed. According to him, the person behind the camera was his friend, the one who had set the fire and narrated the whole thing. Once investigators had a suspect, they placed him under surveillance. But almost immediately, his garage burned down. That gave authorities a reason to search the property, and inside, they found newspaper clippings, recorded news coverage, and more tapes connected to the fires. That was when investigators realized the arson tape was not just one disturbing recording. It was part of an obsession. One tape even showed him and Omar playing a war game in an open field near the same area where the fires had been set.
How you doing, Father? I hope you're doing real good.
On September 27, 1990, just 8 days after the Unsolved Mysteries episode aired, police brought the suspect in for questioning.
And in yet another tape, there's footage of John and Omar playing some kind of war game together in an open field, which investigators later identified as being in or near Edgewood Park, right next to the Emerald Lake Hills neighborhood where all the fires had been set.
And now, to finish the job.
He broke down and confessed. He admitted that he had set the fire shown on the tape and that he was the voice narrating it. Between him and Omar, they were linked to 11 burned structures and 15 grass fires in the Redwood City area. One of those homes had people inside at the time. The family only survived because they woke up, smelled smoke, and escaped before it was too late. Because both suspects had been juveniles when the fires were set, they were tried as juveniles. Omar served time in juvenile detention, while the main suspect was committed to a state mental health facility and ordered to register as an arsonist. And that is what makes this tape so disturbing. It was not just footage of a fire. It was a confession hiding in plain sight. A child found it by accident on the side of a highway, brought it home, and unknowingly gave investigators the one piece of evidence that would expose a series of fires they had been chasing for years. The person behind the camera thought he was recording his own power. Instead, he recorded the beginning of his own downfall. But while this mystery eventually led to an answer, this next recording still doesn't have one. The footage was reportedly found on an old camera near an abandoned house deep in the woods. But because its origin has never been verified, no one can say for sure what really happened that day. At first, the person filming appears to be exploring the area around the abandoned house. Nothing about it is safe, but nothing seems urgent either. Then they hear something in the trees. It sounds like a baby crying. The person behind the camera clearly hears it too, and even though they seem afraid, they begin moving toward the sound. Maybe they think a child is lost. Maybe they think someone needs help. But the closer they get, the stranger it becomes. The crying does not seem to lead them anywhere. Instead, it sounds like it keeps moving farther away, pulling them deeper into the woods. If it was real, then someone or something may have been using the sound of a crying baby to draw them toward an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere. There are more grounded explanations. Some viewers believe it may have been an animal or even a bird capable of mimicking human sounds. But without knowing where the video was filmed, there is no way to confirm that. Whatever the sound was, it puts the person filming in an impossible position. Because if it really is a baby, walking away feels wrong. But if it is not, then every step toward that crying only pulls them deeper into the woods, closer to an abandoned house, and further away from anyone who could help. And that is what makes the footage so unsettling. It is not just the sound itself. It is the fact that the person filming has no way of knowing whether they are hearing someone in danger or being led straight into it. And from a sound no one can explain, we move to footage where the danger was painfully clear from the moment it happened. On February 25th, 2022, 5 commercial divers were working on an underwater oil pipeline at Pariah Fuel Trading Company in Trinidad and Tobago. Their names were Faisal Kurban, Kazim Ali Jr., Rishi Nagasar, Yusuf Henry, and Christopher Boudram. One of them, Kazim, was wearing a GoPro camera during the job. At first, this was supposed to be routine maintenance. The divers were attaching equipment to a pipeline when a sudden pressure difference created a powerful suction force known as delta P. And in an instant, all 5 men were pulled into the pipe. The pipeline was narrow, dark, and partially filled with oil and sediment. Inside, the divers had almost no room to move, no clear way to see, and no easy way back out. As Christopher and Faisal moved through the pipe, Christopher noticed the liquid level rising ahead of them. He realized that if they kept going, they could end up fully submerged. Then, in complete darkness, Christopher made a desperate move. He went beneath the liquid and somehow found scuba tanks that had been sucked into the pipe with them. With those tanks, he and Faisal were able to keep moving until they reached another air pocket. But by then, Faisal was badly injured and could not continue.
I'm going to move further like this. There's a lot of water ahead. When you have 2 tanks, you're not sure if the tank is full. I make them understand the situation.
Christopher promised he would send help and kept going alone. After hours inside the pipeline, he reached a section where he could move upward, then began banging against the pipe. Someone outside eventually heard him, and the upper section was open so he could be rescued. But once Christopher was out, he told them the others were still trapped inside, and according to him, some of them were still alive. He begged for a rescue attempt, but officials refused to authorize anyone going back in. Later, it was revealed that the remaining divers had survived for days after the incident. An investigation later concluded that the pipeline owner should face trial for gross negligence and manslaughter, partly because of the refusal to allow a rescue operation for the trapped men. The GoPro containing this footage was eventually found at the bottom of the pipe, and that is what makes this case so hard to process. The most disturbing part is not only that 5 men were pulled into a pipeline and trapped in total darkness, it is that one of them made it out, told everyone the others were still alive, and help still did not come in time. And that takes us to the next recording, one that also happened underwater, but this time the danger built slowly, 1 meter at a time. Off the coast of Egypt, near the resort town of Dahab, there is a diving spot that looks beautiful from above, but has taken the lives of so many divers that it earned a darker name: the Divers' Cemetery. It is called the Blue Hole, a massive underwater sinkhole that drops more than 300 feet into the earth. Many of the divers who died there were not beginners. They were trained, experienced people who entered the water believing they were in control and never came back up. In April of 2000, 22-year-old Yuri Lipsky arrived in Dahab with a plan. He wanted to dive the Blue Hole and film the Arch, an underwater tunnel around 184 feet below the surface that connects the sinkhole to the open sea. A highly experienced local diver, Tarek Omar, warned him that he needed proper technical training first. But Yuri did not have time. April 28th was his last chance before leaving Egypt. So around 5 p.m., Yuri entered the water alone, without a dive buddy, without a guide, and with only 1 tank of regular compressed air. He was also wearing a heavy weight belt and carrying a head-mounted camera to record the dive. His buoyancy vest should have helped him control the descent, but underwater, that only matters if everything works exactly the way it is supposed to. And at first, nothing looks wrong. Yuri is already in the water, adjusting the camera and preparing for the dive. It feels calm, almost ordinary. The kind of footage that could easily look like a normal vacation dive if you did not know what was coming. As Yuri begins descending, his breathing sounds steady. He equalizes his ears, checks his gear, and uses his buoyancy vest to control his speed. For the first few minutes, he seems completely in control. But then the light begins to disappear. The deeper he goes, the darker everything becomes. The bright blue water slowly turns into murky blackness, and soon, the only thing visible is whatever his camera light catches directly in front of him. That is when the first warning sign appears. Yuri is sinking faster. He should be slowing himself down, but the gaps between him inflating his buoyancy vest are getting longer. Whether he does not realize how fast he is descending, or he can no longer stop it, the result is the same. He keeps dropping. At that depth, regular compressed air becomes dangerous. Nitrogen narcosis can cloud a diver's judgment, making them feel confused, detached, or unable to understand how much danger they are in. The deeper Yuri falls, the harder it becomes for him to recognize that the descent itself is becoming the problem. Then his dive computer starts beeping. The alarm likely means he has passed a safe depth limit, but Yuri is still sinking. Moments later, the camera captures his dive computer again. It shows him at more than 80 meters below the surface. Seconds later, he is almost 90 meters down, then around 91 meters, roughly 300 feet beneath the water. In less than 20 seconds, he drops nearly 10 more meters. At that depth, breathing regular air is no longer just risky. It can become toxic. His brain is being affected by both nitrogen narcosis and oxygen toxicity, while his ability to think clearly is falling apart in real time. Then the footage reaches the point of no return. Yuri is on the bottom of the blue hole. He crawls along the seafloor, kicking up sand and silt, clearly trying to do something. But his movements look confused, almost as if he knows he needs to act, but can no longer understand what the right action is. You can hear him try to use his buoyancy control device again. But nothing happens. The vest does not inflate. Either it has failed, ruptured, or there is no longer enough air left to make it work. At around 300 feet below the surface, with 26 pounds of lead strapped to his body, Yuri is now pinned to the bottom with no clear way back up. At some point, he removes the camera from his head and places it on the ground, possibly trying to lose even a small amount of weight. But the camera keeps recording. For the next few minutes, it lies in the sand while Yuri's breathing and dive computer can still be heard in the background. And then eventually, there is nothing. Yuri was only 22 years old. The next day, Tarek Omar was sent down to recover him. At around 115 meters, he found Yuri's body. And nearby, sitting on a rock ledge, he found the camera. The camera should not have survived that depth. It was rated for far less pressure than it had been exposed to, but somehow, it was still working. 2 days later, Yuri's mother arrived in Egypt to collect his belongings. When they went through his equipment, Tarek turned on the camera, not realizing what it had captured. And together, they watched Yuri's final minutes. That is what makes this footage so difficult to forget. Yuri entered the water thinking he was going to film one of the most famous dive sites in the world, but instead, His own camera recorded the moment a calm dive turned into confusion, then panic, then silence. Most found footage becomes disturbing because of what appears on screen. This one is disturbing because the camera kept recording after Yuri could no longer save himself. And that takes us to the next footage, which is different, because this time, the danger was visible before anyone reacted. In October 2015, a man in Japan was live streaming from his room to a small audience. At first, nothing about the stream seemed dangerous. He was sitting in a cluttered room, surrounded by books, cardboard, paper, and plastic bags, while showing viewers a new oil lighter he had bought. But the room around him was already a fire hazard. And then, while trying to use the lighter, everything changed. The flame suddenly flared up in his hands. Startled, he threw the burning object into a nearby trash bag. That one mistake turned the entire live stream into a disaster. The bag was filled with paper and caught fire almost immediately, but at first he did not even notice what was happening behind him. He kept focusing on the lighter, while everyone watching could already see the flames growing in the background. The robotic voice in the recording was not random. It was the live stream chat being read out loud, with viewers repeatedly trying to warn him to look behind him. By the time he finally turned around, the fire was already spreading. Instead of calling emergency services right away or using a proper extinguisher, he tried to fight the flames with whatever was closest to him. He moved burning items, threw a small amount of water on the fire, and even tried to smother it with cardboard and bedding. But everything he did only seemed to make it worse. The flames grew larger, the room filled with smoke, and the viewers could only watch as the fire took over more and more of the apartment. Eventually, he had no choice but to run. Reports later connected the live stream to a fire in Nihama, Japan, where part of a 2-story home burned and 3 people suffered injuries. Thankfully, no deaths were reported in the most reliable accounts. And that is what makes this footage so frustrating to watch. Everyone watching the live stream saw the danger before he did. They warned him again and again, but by the time he understood how bad it had become, the fire was already out of control. And from a room where everyone could see the danger, we moved to a place where almost nothing could be seen at all. Deep beneath the streets of Paris is a tunnel system most tourists will never enter. The official catacombs are already unsettling enough, with narrow passageways, low ceilings, and walls filled with human bones. But beyond the public route is a much larger underground maze of forbidden tunnels, hidden entrances, and unmapped rooms that stretch far below the city. And somewhere inside that off-limits part of the catacombs, a camera was allegedly found. The footage was said to have been recorded in 1993, but it did not become widely known until the year 2000, when it appeared on the TV show Scariest Places on Earth. In the episode, French filmmaker Francis Friedland explained that the tape had been given to him by a catacomb explorer who claimed it was discovered deep underground. But the most disturbing part was not just where the camera was found. It was that the man who recorded it was never identified. No one knew who he was, why he had gone that deep into the tunnels, or whether he ever made it back out. At first, the recording looks like a normal, illegal exploration. The man moves through dark passageways, filming narrow tunnels and underground rooms as he makes his way deeper into the catacombs. Nothing seems urgent yet, but the further he goes, the more isolated the footage begins to feel. There is no visible group with him, no clear exit, no sign that he knows exactly where he is, just the camera light, his footsteps, and the tunnels around him.
This video camera was found deep in the catacombs. It was picked up by a catacomb explorer, some of the people who wandered down there. It was given to me. I looked at the tape. It's very bizarre. This person occasionally stops and he photographs bones, often in the shape of an arrow. These arrows point in a direction. Occasionally also he stops to photograph roomfuls of bones, which means that he's very, very deep inside the catacombs. What happened to him? Nobody knows.
Some parts of the footage show rooms filled with bones, arrows painted on the ground, and strange markings on the walls. One of the most recognizable details is a dark silhouette-like painting, which later becomes important when Friedland and his crew try to retrace the man's route. At this point, the man still seems somewhat in control. He is moving through the tunnels, filming what he sees, and continuing forward. But the longer the footage goes on, the more uncomfortable it becomes, because nothing around him looks familiar, and there is no obvious way back. Then, the mood changes.
So basically, he's filming what he's seeing. Endless. Very deep inside the catacombs. View shots, other than pictures of bones. Human bones. These were the poor Parisians who died over the last 1,000 years. At times you'll see there's signs, painted signs on the wall, which is not uncommon. People have been painting in the catacombs for centuries. So it is possible with these paintings that we may be able to retrace his itinerary to some extent.
The man's breathing becomes faster. His movements become more unstable. He no longer seems like someone calmly exploring an underground tunnel. He seems like someone who has realized something is wrong. Every few seconds, he appears to stop, almost as if he is trying to figure out where he is. But each pause only makes the situation feel worse because the tunnels all look the same. Then comes the moment that makes the footage so hard to forget. He starts running. It is never clear what caused the panic. Maybe he realized he was lost. Maybe his light was starting to fail. Maybe he heard something behind him. Or maybe he saw someone else in the tunnels. But whatever happened, this is the point where the footage stops feeling like an exploration. It starts feeling like an escape.
We hear his breathing get louder and louder, as though something was scaring him. He's frightened, he's frightened. Occasionally he stops, perhaps to try to decide which way to run among all the many different corridors. He's running faster and faster and faster, deeper and deeper into the catacombs. And all of a sudden, and it keeps rolling until it runs out of tape.
After studying the video, Friedland believed the man had been extremely deep inside the catacombs. The rooms filled with disorganized bones and the lack of graffiti on the walls suggested that he may have reached an area far away from the sections normally seen by visitors or casual explorers. Wanting to understand what had happened, Friedland later entered the catacombs with a crew and tried to compare the original footage to the tunnels around them. And then they found something. The same painting on the wall. Then, the same room filled with bones. That meant at least some of the places shown in the tape were real locations inside the catacombs. But finding the route did not answer the most important question. What made the man run? The search eventually became dangerous for the crew as well. Their flashlight batteries began running low, and after hours underground, Friedland realized that getting back out was becoming harder than getting in. After spending around 12 hours in the tunnels, they called off the search. They never found the man. They never found remains. And they never found a clear explanation for what happened. After the episode aired, viewers began debating the footage. Some believe the man simply got lost and panicked after realizing he might never make it back to the surface. Others think he may have run into another person underground, which would explain why he suddenly started moving so fast. There is also the possibility that the footage was staged. Only a small part of the alleged tape was ever shown publicly, even though Friedland claimed the original recording was much longer. The man was never identified, the full tape was never officially released, and there is no confirmed public record proving exactly how the camera was found. And that is what makes this footage so unsettling. If it was staged, then it became one of the most famous underground horror clips ever presented as real. But if it was not staged, then somewhere beneath Paris, a man went so deep into the catacombs that he lost control, started running from something no one else could see, dropped his camera in the dark, and was never publicly identified. For most found footage, the scariest part is what the camera captures. But in this case, it is what the camera never shows. What made him run? And why did he leave his only light behind? That's all for today, folks. If you'd like to see more of this creepy content, click on the video on screen.